So does anyone have any questions for Andrea? And I can repeat them too.
So I followed your We Doodle challenge
Oh,
to the
good.
best of my ability. I did not do all 21 days, but it was really enjoying. And I haven't been on social media a lot lately, but I noticed that you have another kind of challenge where you're putting out some prompts or some inspirational notes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So that was a challenge that I just wrapped up last week on Valentine's Day called Creative Love. Hashtag Creative Love, hashtag I am creative. So I get a lot of questions from people about advice or tips on how to keep being creative or being inspired on a regular basis. So for me, it was a way of just sharing those responses online. So for 14 days, I would post these creative kind of challenge prompts to get people to be inspired and to just take a few minutes a day to think about their creativity. So a little bit different from the We Doodle challenge because we weren't sharing the final item. Some people did, but just something to trigger and get people thinking about what they want to do.
Great.
Hi, thank you so much. Really, that was great.
Thank you.
I was just wondering, you mentioned that you'll sort of doodle kind of freehand, and then sometimes you'll take bits of those and sort of use them in other contexts. And I was wondering, kind of, process-wise, like how you do that. Do you just like pen and then sort of scan it and then like Photoshop? How does that work?
Yes. So I always, of course, doodle by hand, and I do it using the Uniball pen. More recently, with the coloring book, I started using the Micron pen, depending on how thick I want the line to be. And then I would take that drawing and scan it in, clean it up a little bit in Photoshop, but then take it into Illustrator. Sometimes I would live trace. Live trace is awesome, but sometimes it doesn't hold the line like I would like. So I would usually just go in Illustrator and use the pen tool to redraw. Yeah.
Any other questions for Andrea?
I just wanted to know how you said you were navigating it and working through how to deal with, being asked to speak about political things that maybe you weren't even thinking about. So how have you kind of switched that, if you have, in a way that is more conducive to what you want to
I've
show?
learned to answer questions like a politician. That was some advice that was given to me. So I would vaguely answer the question. If it wasn't something I wanted to talk about, I would make sure that I would infuse it with my agenda or my intentions. So I always try to turn it around to what I wanted to talk about, or my intentions behind the work. But again, I'm still figuring it out because literally the book was just released 3 months ago. So I'm still learning, and I'm trying to find my place as an artist, but also being able to, be true to my voice in terms of, political agendas or ethical, or thinking about, that diversity issue, which I kind of think I have mixed feelings about. So I'm still trying to find my voice in all of that.
I actually have 2 questions.
Sure.
The first question is, while you were producing the book, because I doodle for fun, but I think that if I was required to doodle and I had a certain number of pages, that I would start to get burnt out a little bit. I wanted to know how you dealt with that, and also what you're working on next. What's coming up?
Okay. So I did get burnt out. But I think for me, because the deadline was so tight, so I'm sure you guys have all heard about the adult coloring book craze that happened last year. And we were trying to get this book out before that bubble was going to burst, and also before the holiday season. So I literally had to finish it in 60 days. And honestly, I couldn't really take time to be burnt out. I just ran through it, and then at the end of it, I was like, okay, now I can't draw anything for a long time. But it was therapeutic too, because drawing for me, doodling for me, is something that I really enjoy doing. So it wasn't that bad. I think the stress of figuring out what to draw within 60 days was the tough part. So what's next for me? I'm actually working on book number 2. So that's coming out in the fall again, and it's called Becoming Me, and it's not a coloring book, although there is going to be some coloring in it. And the book is to inspire creativity amongst young girls. So just giving those doodle prompts again, creative prompts throughout 200 pages with little doodles and drawings and things. So I'm really excited about that.
Good morning. I was just curious as to why you decided. I feel like as an adult, I sort of figured out how to love my hair. And maybe when I was younger and I was getting a relaxer or getting my hair hot combed and it was a process, like something like this might have been, I think, nice or refreshing. What was it that made you decide to make this an adult-focused book versus something for children?
Well, I think it was more of a marketing strategy for the publisher. So for me, I mean, it's a coloring book for anybody, right? Any young girls, adults can do it. But the only difference is that the drawings are more intricate, which is a little difficult for young kids or young girls. And my style tends to be really intricate, so it seemed like a better fit.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Put it behind you.
Hi, thank you so much
Hi.
for sharing your story.
Of course.
When you have the experience of working with clients, have you ever experienced any kind of pushback on your artist, on your art, and if so, how would you deal with it?
Well, that's tough because usually folks will come to me because they know my style. I think it really depends on the project, but in terms of pushback, up front, really early on, I try to get a really clear understanding of what the client is looking for. And if we're still not on the same page once the design process begins, I try to maybe revisit what our intentions are for the project. I always try to have some kind of collaborative space where we can share ideas. So like on Pinterest, we'll have a mood board where they'll upload images that they really like or are inspired by. I try to keep the client really involved in the process so they're not surprised. They can never say, oh, I didn't see this, or I didn't know that this was, what you were going to do. So trying to keep that dialogue and communication happening so there isn't ever too much of a surprise later on. Yeah.
Hi. As an artist and with your goals of letting it go, whatever your work is there a clear line for you between putting it out there and letting it go and inspiring people and being trampled over, like ethically, like you mentioned, like where is the line for you of embracing people using your things and working on them and then going too far?
Can you so you mean with like the coloring book,
yeah, anything specific, but just I guess I play music, so I understand what it is to feel like something's coming through you and make it happen and then let it go, and then wonder like where the line is, or even with writing, especially with words and things like that. So I'm just wondering if you know where the clear line is for yourself, or if there is one. Or
I don't. For me, when I release it, I just let it go. I think that's the best way I can answer because, I try. A lot of people have said to me, this is your baby. This is the thing that you've been working on for all this time, and it's a huge project. And I never felt like it was my baby. I felt like, yes, it was something that I nurtured, but I never had this attachment to it. And I don't think I ever have attachments to the work that I create. It's, I make it, and then I put it out there. If people like it, I won't say that mean comments won't hurt me. I'm human, so I won't say that. But I just have to really understand that this is what I wanted to say, and that's it. That's all I can do.
Him and then.
Just a quick question
Sure.
on your, just kind of like your visual style. You seem to have like a very like dense, kind of like, you know, almost like Islamic kind of like very dense, just style as opposed to, you know, more sparse one. And I was just wondering if that came from anywhere, or that just seems to be expressive or most appropriate to you, or if you could just comment on that.
I would say I love pattern, and I love really dense patterns. I love texture, and I think that my doodles tend to mimic that. I'm always looking to those kinds of images for references, and I feel like my doodles just like kind of, you know, speak to that style. And so like I always bring in my iteration of a motif from a pattern that I might have seen. So that might be what you're picking up on. Yep.
Hello.
Hi.
So one of the things that I find most fascinating is your ability to let it go. Do you think, so I know that you're a professor and that you also started your kind of career off working with clients. Do you think any of that, has influenced your ability to let it go? Because when you're working with a client, it's not exactly yours, right? Because
Yes.
it's the client's too.
Yes.
And then two, this might be hard, and I don't even know if you know the answer,
Okay.
but are there any things that you tell your students or other artists out there, maybe that you're mentoring, as to how to then release? Because it is true that once you put something out there, people are going to have their own experience
Exactly.
with it, right?
Exactly. Well, to your first question, I always say, so I didn't mention this, well, slightly when I talked about Hallmark cards, but my background is in graphic design. That's what I went to undergrad for and grad school. And I always say that now being an artist or working full-time as an artist, that the graphic design experience has definitely helped me not take it personal. And that's what I tell my students, like, you know, I'm giving you this critique. This is my feedback. I'm trying to help you make it better. We're all trying to make you get better as a designer. Don't take any of this personal. And again, sometimes it's hard because you put your blood, sweat, and tears into this work, and it's, you know, personal expression in a lot of ways. You're being really personal with your interests and background when you're bringing it into the artwork. So it's hard to not take it personal, but I try to remember that it's not about me when it's out there. It's not about me when I'm getting this feedback. So that's still practicing.
Any other questions for Andrea? No? Going once, twice, thrice? Okay. Thank you so much,
Thank
Andrea.
you.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
all
much.
so much for coming.